Hello everyone, this is Trevor with Mando Deck Tech, and today we're going to be talking about Gen Con and the 3 days of tournament results that we have. We do not have a list of everything that's in everybody's decks, but we do have an idea now of who was playing what and how they did. Now, while this is important and we want to go ahead and talk about it, is that this is our first major look at the meta. Now, we have had, some cash tournaments here and there, but this is 3 full days of tournament results we're going to get to take a look at, and so we're really going to get a really great snapshot of exactly what the meta looks like, and to see which decks are doing really well and which surprisingly didn't. So first off, if you went to Gen Con, I'm super jealous of you. I was not able to grab one of these convention exclusives, and that makes me sick to my stomach because they are crazy expensive, but they are beautiful, and hopefully I'll be able to score one of these in the future. Now, without further ado, we are going to go ahead and take a look at these decks. And this is day 1 Gen Con. Alright, so this is very interesting. I was super excited to see where this was, and what I was looking for mainly when looking at this is what decks are doing well and that were brought over from set 1 and what new decks came out from set 2. Now, first off, the deck that everyone's been talking about is Old Han Yellow. We saw this go undefeated at a couple of the big cash tournaments nationally, and now day 1 of Gen Con, Troy comes in and goes 7-0 with this deck. So for those of us that are planning, of upcoming big tournaments, particularly the Planetary Qualifiers are coming up, we're looking at what decks do we need to put in what's called, I'm calling it the gauntlet. Like, all of my friends are putting together like a decks that we're going to test against, and we're calling it the gauntlet. Like, we're going to run through the Sabines and the Bobas and things of that nature, and now we're seeing, I think Old Han Yellow deserves a spot in that gauntlet of decks. We need to really play test and understand, what it is they're trying to do and maybe how we can kind of thwart it. Looking over this list from day 1, there are a lot of great takeaways. This was definitely the day of Sabine. If you look in the top 8, 4 of the top 8 were Sabine. You go into the top 16, we see 3 more Sabines. Most of them here are running the green ECL version, which is not surprising how strong Poe Dameron is in that list. There is a Sabine yellow deck that did really well, as it did 6-1. And then we want to go through and look at other decks that did really well, particularly new decks. Qira ECL is a great deck that we're seeing out there. It is a great control deck, and we did see it go 5-2 twice in the same day. We see John went 11th, and then Andrew came in here at number 16. Both went 5-2 with Qira. There is another Old Han Yellow deck at 15. The deck that stood out to me is you've got a Han 2 blue. Now, Han 2 is going to be Young Han. So that is the Jedi Han deck that I've been playing around with. I've got a deck list on my channel as well. A lot of people have been taking a look, and it's getting some talk. Just the idea of getting Luke out a turn earlier is super strong, but being that you can go, Obi-Wan a turn earlier and then on turn 6 or a 6 resource turn and then roll it right into Luke is extremely good. So we're seeing that, and also the big takeaway for me here is that Colby Bernardo took Tarkin Yellow, a deck I absolutely adore, and went 5-2 with it. I believe I saw he has a channel, I believe that's Poe Dameron. I did get to see some of his videos of how he was playing it, and he does have a couple of differences from the deck that I was playing. He has a Sneak Attack Vader combo in there that's pretty fun. So I'm super excited to see, and hopefully he'll show off his full list, because that's a deck I've been playing a lot and really, really been enjoying it. But overall, day 1, great stats here. I do want to do a shout out to Christian Toby down here, who took Bo-Katan 5-2. I love that. I'm a big Bo-Katan fan for the character. I was hoping that would be a character that would be really good in the meta. And I haven't really had a lot of luck with it early on. I've done okay, but the fact that this person here did 5-2 with it might be that this is a rogue deck that might be pretty good in the meta. We'll see. So this is day 1. Not a lot of surprises here, other than the fact that the young Han showed up and did extremely well a couple times, and then we did see a Tarkin deck show up. But again, Sabines, I think the biggest takeaway for me in day 1 was the lack of Boba. If you look in the top 8, there's only 1. If you could stretch it out to the top 16, still only 1. So today was a day that Sabine kind of rocked it. Now, we move over to day 2, and that's a totally different story. Today, the Sabines don't show up as much, but then you've got Boba Yellow starting to show up. Particularly, you see this packet down here, 12, 13, 14, all Boba Yellow goes 5-2. The number 1 deck for this day is Qira ECL. Now, I do have that deck list. I'm not going to show it. because I know that's a YouTuber. His channel is Woo with 5 or 6 zeros, I forget. But I do know that he's going to be posting that deck, so I don't want to steal his thunder. It's a fantastic deck, and I'm very curious to see what his insight is on that deck, being that he ran 7-0 with it. So that's a very strong showing for that deck. We also have Krennic showing up again, going 6-1. We do see some Boba action here. But the one takeaway that I had here is if you take a look here, Hondo Blue, George Hudson runs a Hondo deck and goes 5-2. I don't think anybody here would have bet that, Hondo is going to make a top 8 at Gen Con, but here it is. He did it. He was the top rated 5-2 in day 2. So major props to him playing that deck. I'm very excited to see a Hondo deck show up and do something well. We also saw Kylo Yellow show up here. Jacob played that as well, went 5-2. I'm not saying some of the last names because I'm Southern and I murder people's names or in the English language in general. It is like a pastime for me, so I'll try to save myself that embarrassment. But if we go through here, we'll take a look here. Trevor Frost, I can say that one. He took Bosk ECL 5-2, so props to you. I'm a Trevor, so I can respect any other Trevor in the game. And as we continue to go down here, we see Cad Bane Red went 5-2. That's a super aggro, kind of a bully deck. I'm excited to see Cad Bane show up. We see Vader Green down here at the bottom and more Boba. Han 2, the young Han, is showing up again here down at the bottom, went 5-2. So I think the young Han blue deck is definitely a deck that we have to start really talking about as we prepare for the new season of tournaments. So Qira, Boba, Sabine, there's some Palpatines here, but overall a good showing and a good mix of a healthy environment. There's not like 1 to 2, 3 decks that are dominating everything. We're seeing a good mix. I do want to say, if you look here, Troy here, who went 7-0 in day 1 with Old Han Yellow, went 6-1 in day 2. I mean, you're basically dominating, going 13-1 over 2 days with Han Yellow. That is two things. One, it's a very good deck and also a very good player, because that is not an easy deck to navigate and to play. I find of all the decks that I've looked at, that is the one that I've seen that takes the most practice with, and you really have to put the time and the effort to play that deck effectively. There's just a lot of little micro decisions you have to make in that deck on when exactly you're going to be pulling off the Han ability, and I find that it's a very satisfying deck to play when it runs off, and the fact that this guy did it over 2 days, that's amazing. So major props to you. Let's look at day 3. Day 3 was the day of Boba. I guess the Boba Fett's were like, you know what, we're sick of not being the top, so we're going to show up to day 3 and crush it. So your top 3 decks, all Boba. You had Boba Yellow go 7-0, and then we had another 6-1 Boba, and then 6-1 of the Boba 1 Green. Interesting enough, it doesn't say it's an ECL Boba like some of the others are stated here, but I'm wondering if that was actually an ECL deck as well. Frank Myers shows up. He goes 6-1 with Young Han Blue. Major props to that. So we're definitely seeing that is definitely a deck in the meta. There's a couple more Sabines. Iden Green did show up. That was probably, I think maybe, is that the first Iden deck I've seen do well, 5-2. Daniel Vivar, sorry if I ruined it for you. He went Tarkin Yellow, went 5-2. So good. We saw Tarkin show up twice in here. So that's still, I would consider that a rogue deck. Maybe not part of the official gauntlet of top decks, but I do like the fact that we had that show up twice. And we continue to go down here and take a look at anything else that really pops out at us, and that is George Hudson, number 23, showing up Hondo Blue again. So he went 5-2 with Hondo in both days 2 and 3. And I think that's something really worth talking about, because that's a deck not a lot of people were talking about, flew under the radar, showed up. And, did he do well because people were unfamiliar with it? Maybe. Did it take a lot of guts to show up and play that deck? Absolutely. So major props to George for playing that deck. And I actually have that deck list, and I'm not sure if he's a YouTuber or not, but here is his deck. Now, I'm not even going to begin to kind of talk about the strategy of this deck. A local player here I got to play yesterday, and a local was playing this deck, and it was really cool and different. And my takeaways from this deck is I feel that there's a lot of opportunity on where this deck can go. I like this guy's list, but I honestly can't speak intelligently enough about it because I haven't played it a lot. But I'm very excited that Hondo is showing up, and it's something I'm definitely going to take a look at playing more. So here is his deck. I think it's cool that he rolls into the control deck, the Child's and Vigilance, Blast, Smoke, all of that is fairly cool. I do know that First Light is a real superstar in this deck. It was when I played against it yesterday, or a version of this. But Covert Strength and Timely Intervention do some work in this deck. So I'm very excited to see that Hondo showed up. Again, is it going to be a dominant nugget? Probably not. I don't know about that. But it is a rogue deck that we should be definitely taking a look at. And with that, let's take a look. I've been talking a lot about Gauntlet and Rogue, and now let me kind of explain what we're talking about. So I was able to grab a seat for the Planetary Qualifier here in Greenville, South Carolina. There were only 100 seats. It sold out in, I think, 3 hours or something crazy. And we're seeing that across the board. And I do want to say I'm shocked that we didn't get one in Atlanta. We didn't get one in Raleigh. There's big player bases there. There's a lot of player bases across the country that did not get a qualifier. I am shocked that Greenville got one. I'm thankful because that's my hometown. And shout out to Borderlands for landing that. I'm sure they're going to do a great job with the venue and everything. It's just, I'm shocked we're not getting more of these, and especially in some of the larger markets. So, this channel moving forward, we're going to be looking at the meta. We're going to be looking at, basically what I'm calling the road to the PQ as we kind of get ready for the Planetary Qualifier season, which is going to be in October. And this is the space that we're going to be playtesting in. So we have the Gauntlet, which is the decks that I know we're going to run into. We've got a play test. Maybe we play one of these decks and tech it to, this environment. Or maybe we're going to play something kind of roguey that can kind of... There's never going to be a magic bullet deck that beats everything, but something you feel comfortable with that you have like a fighting chance against most of the field. So the Gauntlet is the decks that I see that we need to be prepared for. All 3 versions of Sabine, all the colors. And then I see an aggro Boba put on there, but there's a lot of different versions of Boba. I think Boba Yellow is definitely the dominant nugget right now. That's something we saw at set 1. It's only gotten better into set 2. Definitely something you're going to have to play test against. Qira Control, I think that is a top tier deck right now. I still think Palpatine Control is something we still have to play test against and prepare for. He has a very unique ability that affects things a little differently. And I think at this point we have to say that Old Han, particularly the mono yellow version, is absolutely a tier 1 deck. It's got, the data shows that is a tier 1 deck, and we really need to be able to understand it and play test against it, or maybe even just play it if you feel comfortable enough with that deck. There is a green version of it I've seen as well that does really well, but that is definitely something we need to play test for. Vader Green Control, I still think while we didn't see it hit the top, we saw several of those go 5 and 2. I still think it's a very strong deck. Again, this is something that we should be play testing against, as well as Krennic. I put Aignan here as well, even though we didn't see it do extremely well at Gen Con. There were a few people that did well with it. It's still in that same vein of playtesting as a hard control deck. Then we have the Rogues. Now, traditionally, in all my years of playing different games, I usually like to play in the Rogues and try to see if I can beat the Gauntlet. So the Rogues are going to be Tarkin Space. I love that deck. Still playing a lot with that. I'm shocked that Rey Red did not do well at Gen Con. I think it's a very good, just solid deck. I'm very curious to see. I'd like to talk to some of the people that played at Gen Con. Did you run into it? Was it underrepresented? Or did it just not fare well against certain decks? Very curious to see how that went. Young Han, I had Double Red on here as a rogue. I think is a very good aggression deck. And I had an ECL version of that deck on here. Young Han Blue, the Jedi Han deck that I posted a video on my channel about earlier. I believe that deck may need to go from Rogue to Gauntlet. I think that might slide over because it's obviously a lot of people were playing it at Gen Con. It did really well. I think multiple people playing it over multiple days and going 5 and 2 tells me that deck is really good. Other ones on here we need to take a look at, Bosk Bounty. There's a couple guys that did really well with that. There's a Kylo Rush deck. I've seen a Reanimator version of that deck. I don't know how strong that's going to be. But we've also know that Hondo Blue, I can't believe I'm putting this on my rogues, but if a guy went 5 and 2 days in a row with it, it's definitely something we should take a look at. So again, major props to you. And then Cad Bane, I think that we saw a few guys do okay with this deck. I think that deck can be an absolute bully, particularly the yellow version that I've seen, that I've been playing around with, the mono version. So I think that's a deck we should absolutely continue to take a look at. And maybe there's more decks out there. I didn't put Bo-Katan on here. We only saw one person go 5 and 2 with it. As much as I'd like to see that deck, I don't know if that's going to be a real contender in the meta. So that being said, moving forward, what this channel is going to be is we're going to be building decks. We're going to be placing against the Gauntlet and the Rogues and kind of talking about how it's doing against each one. So if you like that kind of content, please subscribe, follow, whatever, do all the things, like it, as we kind of begin this journey of kind of preparing for the Planetary Qualifier coming up in October. And with that, I thank you so much for staying with me this long through the video, talking about Gen Con. If you have any other takes about what you're seeing come out of that meta for the first 3 or 4 days, I'd love to hear it. Please comment down below. And other than that, let's just see you in the next one. Take care.